Let's take a look at interdependence of organisms. Okay, so it looks like we got 6 questions here that we'll try to focus on. Um, what is an ecosystem? Right? And being able to differentiate that from a community or a population or a biosphere. Top consumer in the food chain. Example of an invertebrate. Difference between biotic and abiotic. The coldest biomes. So you have to be familiar with some biomes. We'll go over those. The defining feature of a freshwater biome. Okay, not too bad. Not too bad. All right. So first here we'll look at population refers to all the species members found in a particular area. A community, on the other hand, encompasses all the populations in an area. A community is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. An ecosystem, right? And that was one of our questions there. An ecosystem encompasses both a community and its physical environment. An ecosystem is a community of living organisms in conjunction with the non-living components of their environment. Okay, and then for biosphere, biosphere includes many ecosystems. So we can see they keep getting bigger and bigger, including more things, right? The biosphere is the global ecological system integrating all living beings, including their interaction with the elements of the lithosphere, geosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. Okay, and then finally, population density measures the density or number of organisms in a certain area and applies to all organisms on Earth. Okay, there's our little intro. Carnivore, herbivore, omnivore. So this I think has shown up in one other video and in one other section, but here we're also adding saprophytes. So omnivores eat plants and animals. Omnivores is probably, I think herbivores is the one. Herbivores and carnivores people tend to know, with herbivores only referring to plants. Carnivores eat meat and include predators and scavengers. And saprophytes feed on dead organisms. If we look at the food chain, a quaternary consumer is the top consumer in the food chain. An example could be a hawk eating a snake. An organism that eats autotrophs, such as a rabbit eating grass, is a primary consumer. A snake eating a rabbit is an example of a secondary consumer. Primary producers are autotrophs, such as grass. A decrease in primary consumers means less consumption of primary producers, allowing population growth in these organisms. Okay, so that tends to be how the questions are, is they'll, have some example, right? So like a rabbit eating grass is an example of what, right? And that's the kind of question that you want to be prepared for. With vertebrates and invertebrates, the 5 most well-known classes of vertebrates, which are, that just means animals with backbones, are mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians. They are all part of the phylum Chordata, which perhaps is easiest to remember by thinking of spinal cord. Okay, and then invertebrates do not have a backbone, and some common examples are arthropods, protozoa, annelids, and worms. Okay, we can easily see a question on vertebrates and invertebrates. Again, this probably would be an example. Like they probably list out 4 of these, and say, so like it would say like which one of these is not an invertebrate? Arthropods, protozoa, worms, fish, something like that. Okay, biotic and abiotic factors. River temperature is an example of an abiotic factor, which means it's a non-living component of an ecosystem, while salmon population is a biotic factor, which means it's a living component of an ecosystem. We jump into the biomes. Biomes are distinct biological communities that have formed in response to a shared physical climate. Biomes are distinct from habitats because any biome can comprise a variety of habitats. The coldest biome is called the tundra, and I believe that was one of our questions. Was what is the coldest biome? That can easily be a question. The taiga is found south of the Arctic tundra and generally has a lot of snow. Freshwater biomes are large communities of plants and animals centered around waters with less than 1% salt concentration. Types of freshwater biomes include ponds, lakes, streams, rivers, and even some wetlands. Estuaries are the areas between moving and still waters. There are various reasons that tropical rainforests are so biodiverse, including large amounts of sunlight and rainfall, and a rich diversity of ecological niches. Tropical rainforests on land and coral reefs in marine systems are among the most biologically diverse ecosystems on Earth. And then microbiome. This is a mix of organisms that coexist in a defined space, but on a much smaller scale. So that's really all you want to think there. It's a biome, but on a smaller scale. Aquifers, so we need to be familiar with confined versus unconfined, right? As well as just what it is. An aquifer is an underground water supply. There are generally two kinds, confined, unconfined. An unconfined aquifer, also called a water table aquifer, is an aquifer which has the water table as its upper boundary. Unconfined aquifers occur near the ground surface. Okay, and then we have these oceanic zones. Oceanographers have divided the ocean into zones based on how far light reaches. The Epipelagic Zone is one of the closest to the surface and is the best lit. The Mesopelagic Zone, where only small amounts of light penetrate, lies below the Epipelagic Zone. This zone is often referred to as the twilight zone. 90% of the ocean lies in the Bathypelagic Zone, or also called the aphotic zone, into which no light penetrates. Intertidal zones are the area above water at low tide and underwater at high tide. The subtidal zone is the area below the low tide waterline. Okay, and then we jump right back into the questions that we started with. So at this point, great thing to do, hit that pause button, try to answer these 6 questions, and if you can do that, you're in pretty good shape.